It seems like episode 79 will be the last episode of Skibidi Toilet because exactly 4 months have passed since the full episode 79, and there is no news about the continuation of the series. The thing is, the stubborn company that owns the copyright is destroying itself with its own reckless actions. All of this could have been avoided if they had listened to their audience. After all, who are they creating animations for? The series was racking up hundreds of millions of views on every episode, precisely because viewers felt Defook's personal creative touch. As soon as that feeling disappeared, interest began to drop. The community saw it immediately. The company didn't want to. If episode 79 turns out to be the last, the consequences for the storyline will be catastrophic. We will never see the Titan TV man in his former appearance again. In episode 77, he was captured and turned into the Watchman of Doom, becoming a weapon against his own allies. And the Titan cameraman will remain missing. Since his disappearance, no one has given a clear answer about his fate. We will also never see the long-awaited upgrade of Titan Speakerman 3.0. And yet his return was supposed to be one of the key moments of the future storyline. And the most devastating part, formally in this situation, the Astra Toilets have won. The Alliance is crushed, the base is destroyed, both Titans are neutralized. It would be hard to imagine a darker cliffhanger. After the company effectively removed Defook from production, everything went downhill. I and 56 other YouTubers, animators, news channels, editors with a combined audience of tens of millions, sent the company an official letter demanding that creative control be returned to Alexei. They were given 14 days to respond. At the very last moment, a response came. The company wrote that they would discuss the situation with Alexei and suggest a couple of ideas. A week has passed since then, and silence. No one has contacted us yet. This is a classic tactic. Give a response to reduce pressure, then simply wait for the noise to die down. It's worth noting that the company is already facing serious difficulties of its own. Invis is still in a legal battle with a fraudster named Sergey from Next App, who tried to obtain the copyright to the series. Legal proceedings require resources, time, money, and attention. We are prepared to give a little more time. But this cannot go on forever. Sooner or later, 57 creators will simply end negotiations and leave the Skibidi Toilet project alone with the company. Without the community, without content, without an audience, just a brand and legal documents. We'll see how long that lasts. Imagine the story of Skibidi Toilet ending at episode 79, not ending logically, not wrapping things up, but simply freezing at the darkest possible moment. Defook's real-life situation, right now, looks remarkably similar. In this analogy, Defook himself is in the position of the Alliance, while Invis plays the role of the Astro Toilets, step-by-step taking control of Defook's projects. And this parallel is too precise to be a coincidence. To start, it's worth noting that Invis entered Defook's life suddenly and almost out of nowhere. At the moment when he was already facing serious problems, they reached out at just the right time and offered a contract. For Defook, who found himself in a vulnerable position, the support of such a large company looked like salvation. And it's hard to turn down such an offer, especially when there are almost no alternatives. In parallel with this, in the series itself, the Astro Toilets strike the Alliance just as unexpectedly. In episode 74, they attack rapidly and almost immediately capture one of the Titans. In narrative terms, this looks like a sharp turning point, a moment after which everything starts going downhill. And what is especially striking is that after signing the contract, Defook's life becomes harder day by day. Invis gradually, without any sudden moves, begins to take control, first over individual projects, then over the channel as a whole. Formally, it still looks like a collaboration, but in reality, the author is losing almost everything. In the series itself, the Astro Toilets, meanwhile, methodically deploy increasingly powerful, high-ranking, and dangerous fighters, step by step reinforcing their dominance. And almost mirroring this in real life, Invis begins to place increasingly strict restrictions on Defook's ability to create the storyline. By his own words, he no longer takes full part in developing the story. He is forced to do exactly what he is told, and to do it under unrealistic deadlines that make it physically impossible to produce a quality episode. As a rule, in action series like this, good ultimately triumphs over evil. That's how genre logic works, and the audience is used to it. However, reality is far less predictable, and all kinds of outcomes are possible. If we assume that Defook's rights to the channel are taken from him completely, or that he himself refuses to continue working on the animation and declares a kind of boycott, then the story could very well end at episode 79, precisely at the moment when the Astro Toilets have almost completely broken the alliance, leaving it with neither the time nor the resources for a proper response. But if we step away from that scenario and imagine that the series does get a continuation, a far more interesting question arises. What if the Astro Toilets actually win in the end? Such an outcome seems unlikely, which is precisely why it looks so intriguing. This outcome would most likely be gradual, without sharp final chords, so as not to kill the tension and viewer interest. In the first phase, the Alliance would probably manage to fight back. It would feel as though the plot is entering a familiar cycle again. Now, it's time for revenge. Now, the Alliance is on the offensive. The return of the Titan Speakerman and G-Man's secret weapon would inspire hope, and the duo of these forces would look like a real threat to the Astro Toilet Squad. The viewer would start to believe that the balance is shifting again. However, over time, this illusion could be shattered. One of the key characters could disappear from the story permanently, and it would happen not heroically, but suddenly and brutally. For example, the Titan TV man could die during an attempt to rescue him. The Astro Toilets clearly learned from their past mistakes with the Titan Speakerman infection and could very well have designed the device to be one with the core, so that if anyone tries to remove the control device, they destroy the core along with it. Furthermore, it cannot be ruled out that the Titan cameraman is not currently with the Alliance or the secret agent at all. It's logical to assume he could be at the Astro Toilet base, already infected or reprogrammed. If you think about it, the behavior of high-ranking Astro Toilets, such as the Duchess or the UFO Toilet, looks far too calm. They are clearly not troubled by the disappearance of the Titan cameraman along with the Astro Squad, which means his fate may be far more obvious to them than to the viewer. Perhaps he has already been found, and this will become that unexpected striking plot twist revealed later. And finally, the darkest but most logical scenario, G-Man's betrayal. He is, after all, the former commander of the Astro Toilets, and there is no 100% guarantee that his switch to the Alliance's side was sincere. As we know, he was forced to take that step in order to preserve his own life and that of his toilets. It's entirely possible that everything happening is just a subtle, long game designed to earn trust. Given his intelligence, strategic thinking, and cunning, such a scenario looks frighteningly plausible. Yes, this is the most unfavorable path for the storyline. It is cruel, dark, and stripped of the familiar sense of justice. But it is precisely this path that makes the story truly unconventional. Without miraculous rescues, without the Astro Toilet suddenly weakening, and without a naive Alliance victory over a force that objectively surpasses it in every way. There was a character whose action literally changed the entire course of subsequent events. From the successful completion of a critically important mission to the eventual alliance between the Alliance and the Skibidi Toilets. We are talking, of course, about Dark Speakerman, and that moment when he closed the gates at the last second, while the Michael Skibidi Jackson toilet was chasing the squad at full speed. For those who may have forgotten the details, Plunger Man had at that moment given the order to wait for the injured twin cameramen, thereby slowing the group's advance. The situation was extremely dangerous, and any delay would have meant certain death. However, Dark Speakerman reacted instantly, making a decision on his own, without approval or support from the others. He closed the gates and thereby saved the entire death squad. The irony is that at that moment, almost everyone held a grudge against him, considering his action a betrayal, and Plunger Man even hit him several times, not understanding that this very decision was the turning point of the entire story. Now just imagine for a moment what would have happened if that squad had been completely wiped out in a single episode with no chance of survival. First of all, the Skibidi scientist would most likely have managed to escape. The squad led by the large TV man would have arrived too late, and without the remote, capable of temporarily blocking the scientist's technology, their chances would have been close to zero. They would have had neither the time nor the special technology to stop him. Secondly, if the scientist had remained alive and active, the unification of the Skibidi Toilets with the Alliance most likely would never have happened. All key decisions would have been made within their own side, by G-Man and the scientist himself. And here it's important to note a point that many have raised before. There is a possibility that G-Man deliberately left the scientist alone, allowing him to fall into the trap, while he himself left through another exit. The scientist was getting in the way of his long-term plans because G-Man may have already understood that sooner or later he would have to enter into an alliance with the cameraman. The Skibidi scientist, on the other hand, was most likely categorically against such an outcome. He sought to make his race the sole dominant force, the most technologically advanced and powerful without anyone's help, especially without the involvement of former enemies. If the unification had never happened, the rank-and-file fighters of the Alliance would have been doomed. In fact, starting around episode 75, it was the Skibidi Toilets who were taking on the bulk of the dirtiest and most dangerous work. The Alliance simply had no resources left to simultaneously resist two races, each of which surpassed them in numbers and technology. Without that help, the Alliance simply would not have survived the pressure. Moreover, an even darker scenario cannot be ruled out. The Astro Toilets and the Skibidi Toilets could very well have struck a temporary truce, setting aside their mutual hostility in order to destroy their common enemy. In that case, the Alliance would have had absolutely no chance at all. And so it turns out that one small action by an almost forgotten character suddenly becomes that very ray of hope that makes it even possible to talk about salvation from the Astro Toilets. To be fair, within the story, Dark Speakerman deserves not just respect from the other characters, but an actual monument as a symbol of the fact that sometimes it is the unnoticed figures who make the most important choices. That's pretty much everything from me. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this segment. How much do you connect with this kind of approach? And is it worth continuing to explore alternative storyline developments?